Hello, my name is Shelby Thomas, and this is my international speech on the War on Terror. The day before my 6th birthday, I was getting ready for school in my parents' bathroom when I heard my father, panicked, announce to the family to come in and watch TV. I went in with the rest of my family confused and watched as buildings were on fire and airplanes were crashing and people were crying. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that something was very bad. That was September 11th, 2001, and that was the day that Al-Qaeda had hijacked the airplanes and flown into the World Trade Center. Now, George W. Bush announced immediately that America would not stand for this act of terrorism, and we were thrown into the War on Terror. This issue is important to Americans because whenever something like this happens, it's not acceptable to be uneducated on this, to not know what's going on. It's your duty to have an idea, to be educated. So that's why this is very important. I've written several essays on this and read a few books, and what comes to mind each time that we go through this is we've been in this war for 14 years. So even though America is such a powerhouse and we have so much authority in the world, is this a war that can ever be won? I'm going to discuss what the War on Terror is, a few of the highlights of the war, and if it can be won. What exactly is the War on Terror? Well, New York Times writer Eric Schmidt defines it in his 2005 article, U.S. Officials Reload Slogan for Terror War, as the War on Terror refers to the international military campaign that started after the September 11th attack. So basically, the War on Terror began right as the airplanes flew in to the buildings. Now, there have been several things that have preluded this and several things that were building up, but this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and this is what got us into the war. On February 14, 2003, George W. Bush administration defined the following objectives for the War on Terror. The first thing that we were going to do is defeat the terrorists such as Osama bin Laden and demolish their organizations. Secondly, we would identify, locate, demolish terrorists and their organizations. Deny sponsorship, support, and sanctuary to all terrorists. Diminish underlying conditions to terrorists that seek to exploit. And defend U.S. citizens at home and abroad. Okay. Now that I've defined what exactly the War on Terror is and what got us into this war, I'm going to talk about a few of the events that have happened in the past 14 years. On October 7th, 2001, the U.S. troops invaded Afghanistan. Then on March 19, 2003, George W. Bush announced that we would invade Iraq. On April 9th, 2003, the Saddam Hussein statue was toppled, which I remember seeing on TV as a child. And on December 30th, 2006, Saddam Hussein was executed. On May 1st, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed. Now, these 5 bullet points do no justice to everything that's taken place in this war. This is just a small fraction of the events that have happened. But the reason that I chose these events is because each one of these, whenever they occurred, brought hope to Americans that possibly we were nearing the end of this war. But after each one occurred, another problem would overshadow. So now it brings me to my final question. Can this war on terror ever truly be won? Well, recently, March 24th, 2015, Obama was interviewed, and he announced that he would freeze the U.S. troop levels in Afghanistan, but he vowed to end the American war by the end of his presidency. This interview was done by Greg Jaffe in the Washington Post. And this, of course, is exciting news. We're very glad that we're going to be pulling out the troops, hopefully by the end of his presidency. But we've also seen this happen before. Whenever finally the troops were pulled out of Iraq in 2011, that did not end the war. So just because we're going to be pulling people out, does this mean that the war will end? Now, on August 24th, 2004, George W. Bush was interviewed by NBC's Today Show. And they asked him the question that we'd all been wondering. Will we win this war on terror? Can it truly be won? And his answer was no. It cannot be won. This caused an uproar. People were confused. But he said, no, you cannot win the war on terror. The only thing you can do is create conditions so terror tools are less acceptable to people in the world. And this may not be the answer that people want to hear, but when it comes down to it, there's still going to be evil in the world. In conclusion, We defined what the War on Terror is. We highlighted a few key points of this war that's been going on for 14 years, and we questioned if it could ever be officially won. Now, unfortunately, like I said, there are bad people in the world. There will always be evil in the world. But what we can do as Americans is unite and not tolerate these terrorist acts. We can take quick action and immediate action against these people. In your families, you can be sure to be educated. You can be aware of things that are going on. You can form opinions. And as the United States, we need to, always end evil. But I believe the United States is taking the right steps to minimize their power and maximize our strength. Thank you.